because that's what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say Karin Spinks Chester.
Yep.
All right, here we are rocking and a rolling. All right, so I want to start. So you're from Texas, right?
Yep.
And but now you're doing all of this cannabis work in Missouri. Like, how did that all come about?
So I grew up in Texas and I moved here. I was 23 years old. My youngest son was just a year old. And my first husband had family who lived here. So we moved here. So I've been here 26 years now. So it's been,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
27 years. Yeah, because I'm 49. So yeah, I've been here 27 years. But the Texan accent, like, I can't lose it. I've tried.
yeah.
It's not going anywhere. So.
It's all good. So okay, so Missouri's home. So what part of Missouri are you like? Did you like where about?
I live in Hillsboro, which is about 45 minutes south of St. Louis. I lived in the city for about 9 years, and then I'm actually going to probably be relocating back to the city in the
Yeah,
next few months. I'm in and out of the city about 4 times a week, so it kind of makes sense.
yeah, a
But
lot of driving there.
yeah.
Yeah, I know you mentioned Springfield as well. I didn't know
hmm
if maybe like that's where you were at a period of time.
No, I've been in the St. Louis area since I've been here,
Yeah,
and I've only been involved in cannabis for about 3.5, 4 years, but St. Louis has been home for a long time, so.
yeah, yeah. So what drew you to cannabis?
I used it a little bit when I was a teenager, got in trouble for it for sure, and stopped for many, many years. And I had a friend who smoked pot, and every once in a while I'd go hang out with her and we'd smoke pot.
Yeah,
But I'm diabetic, and so alcohol is not good for me.
yeah,
And so 5 or 6 years ago, I started talking to my husband at the time, who was very anti-marijuana, about how much safer it was for me to use cannabis instead of alcohol
yeah,
because I'm diabetic.
yeah.
And so I I had arthritis and didn't realize that cannabis could actually,
Like the anti-inflammatory properties.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
that didn't even occur to me. And then, so I have a genetic version of
Okay.
rheumatoid arthritis.
hmm
So, um, I, a lot of autoimmune disease is caused by, it can be caused from everything from emotional trauma to some physical exposure to something. But my autoimmune disease is a genetic thing. So, I was diagnosed when I was 35, and they didn't want to give me the diagnosis because I was so young, and they don't normally see RA in people my age.
Yeah.
And but they finally did, and I was on. When I started working on the campaign in 2016, I was taking about 46 pills a day,
Oh wow.
and they were all pharmaceuticals. And they had me on major doses of anti-inflammatories, antidepressants. They treat depression with antidepressants in small doses, but for autoimmune disease, they'll give you a huge dose. And so I eventually convinced him that it would be okay for me to smoke pot just to deal with the meds. And I was, nauseous all the time. And I didn't even know. I mean, I used it for probably a year before I realized, oh, wow, I don't need as much pain medication and all of that.
Yeah.
Um, but some of the pharmaceuticals they give you for conditions like RA and chronic pain, they will eat up your brain. I mean,
Oh yeah. Well, they're hard on the liver, they're hard on the gut. You know,
everything.
absolutely. Now, at any point did anybody ever try to counsel you on um just like fixing like your gut or
I
just like
mean,
healthy
not
diet
really.
or lifestyle
No,
changes
no.
or
I
anything,
mean,
or
a little bit. I
but
knew
they're
I
just
needed to
giving
lose weight. I needed to change my diet. But these were kind of things that I fundamentally knew. And but I was a completely different person then. You have to understand. Like, at that time, I had a lot of anxiety and depression.
yeah.
Cannabis helped me with that before I even realized it
Oh yeah.
was. And so, like, now I take, I still take a lot of pills every day, but a lot of it's supplements and stuff.
Mhm.
I take a thyroid pill every day, and I take one pill twice a day for my arthritis, and that's it. Everything else, I take turmeric, and I've
Yeah.
changed my diet and all that.
Oh
I
yeah.
didn't make the gut connection until recently, and that's connected to like your immune system
Oh
and
yeah, your
your
autoimmune and your brain and everything.
everything.
Yeah.
So I didn't make that connection until recently, but doctors don't talk to you about that
Right, yeah, and
stuff.
that's
And
what I'm
that's the
and
thing,
that's my point. Yeah.
the gut thing is ironic that you would bring that up because I went to a doctor's appointment. I don't know, it was a few months ago. I have always had high cholesterol because I got my gallbladder taken out, I was like 23.
Hmm.
And no doctor ever said, okay, you don't have a gallbladder, you need to take digestive enzymes. They told me, oh, you don't need your gallbladder anyway, and it's no big
Yeah, that
deal.
was the time they're just taking things out of
Right,
people.
right. And
Yeah.
so I have chronically high cholesterol. They put me on statins for years and it didn't help. And so finally I just quit taking them because I read that the side effects were bad and it wasn't helping my cholesterol anyway. So
Yeah.
I added a digestive enzyme once a day and my cholesterol came back down to normal. And I go to the doctor and she did my lab work, and before she read it to me I said, here's what you're going to see. My cholesterol is going to be down, and I didn't know other than just that I really believed in what I was doing would help me.
Yeah.
And so she pulls the test results up and I told her it's cuz I'm taking a digestive enzyme. That's honestly the only thing.
Yeah.
She goes, well, I think we should put you on statins just to be safe. And I go,
No.
what are
No
you
way.
talking about? Like, you're fired because,
Yeah.
you
Well, and
know?
here's the thing, cholesterol isn't necessarily a bad thing. You can actually have high cholesterol. They what they have to do is they need to take a look at the ratio of like your LDL, because you have like these very dense particles and then you just have like these small particles. So you actually have to look at that ratio to
Hmm.
see like how much of it is actually bad. I mean, cholesterol is a necessary thing. Like we need it,
Absolutely.
it's a carrier molecule. A lot of people think like cholesterol is like this thing, but it's actually like this transporter. I don't know. I get really
No, I
nerdy into the
totally know. I
science.
know exactly what you're talking about
Yeah.
because a lot of people associate cholesterol with heart disease,
Yeah, and
and
that's not true.
scientifically, there's no basis for that assumption. There,
Right.
you can have high cholesterol and not ever have a heart attack, and you can have perfectly fine cholesterol and drop dead from a heart attack tomorrow. That is not an indicator for that. So
Right, yeah. I mean, there's just a whole period where fat was villainized, and everybody was just ignoring like refined carbohydrates and sugars. And
yes, that's where it's at.
oh yeah,
That's where
absolutely.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely.
processed
Because,
foods.
and then they substituted, well, back in the 90s when the low fat craze hit and they had all
Right.
those like snack wells and fat free this
Oh
and
yeah.
trans fats. So
Mhm.
then trans fats are actually worse than regular fat
Oh
because it's
yeah.
chemicals and it's artificial.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
terrible for you. It's like eating plastic.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's not even food. I read this book called In Defense of Food.
Uh-huh.
I used to have a food blog and be a foodie and all this
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
So yeah, like a million years ago. But this guy wrote this book. And he talked about like what we eat now is not even food really. Like I can open a Twinkie and it can sit on my counter and it will never grow mold. Never.
Is that
Because
true?
oh, absolutely. It'll
Yeah.
get hard and you won't want to eat it.
Yeah.
But if you leave it in the package, like in 100 years, it'll be still soft and squishy.
Huh.
Like if I make a loaf of homemade bread and I leave it out on my counter, 2 days later, it's got mold all over it.
Oh right. Yeah. Just like with raw milk, you have to drink it really fast.
Yeah. I mean, it's not actually food. I mean,
Yeah, it's a lot of food-like products. I
hmm
usually just try to eat just real whole food. It's the simplest thing.
I try to, and I'm terrible. Like I have all this knowledge of what's good for me, and then it's like, what'd you do for dinner last night? Oh, I got a burrito from Quick Trip. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. Well, you know what the issue with that is? So talking about the gut, right? That's the gut bacteria. I mean, it's our second brain. So we have all of
hmm
these like bacteria that influence our decisions. So we think it's really us making these choices, but it's like, is it us or is it the bacteria? Because it's hard at nighttime, right? I
hmm
mean, especially when things are convenient.
No, it is. And, but this is actually something that I've been thinking about a lot, and it's been kind of a recurring thing in my life is to go, like I have all this knowledge about how I need to eat and how much better that will be for me and
Yeah,
whatever. And then I stop at Quick Trip for dinner. You know what
yeah.
I mean? So, I mean, I'm kind of in a I live with my mom. She's disabled.
Okay.
So I live with her and help her and drive her nuts, and she drives me nuts. But, I'm hardly ever home. So
Right.
I know like I need to go to the store and I need to like spend time for food prep and do all that. And I really feel like so I'm on this journey of enlightenment, and I have over the last 3 years since I've been kind of doing this journey, issues come up in my life, and I'm like, okay, like that recurs over and over to me for a reason.
Yeah.
So my gut is the one telling me that I need to change the way I eat. I know it'll make a difference for my arthritis, which
Oh yeah.
I've been mostly in remission for a couple of years now. Somebody messaged me on Facebook and told me that a 1-to-1 oil would put me in remission. And so
1-to-1 being CBD
CBD
THC.
to THC. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it did. I went to Colorado. I got a 1-to-1 oil and a 3-to-1 oil, and those helped me. That's how I've gotten off all the medication is because of cannabis, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Yeah, it's amazing just that one plant can do so many things.
yeah, and yeah, it is. It's medicine, it's food, it's shelter, it's
Yeah, I mean it's
fuel.
fiber.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean you can
everything. You
use it
can,
for every clothes and
yeah.
paper and just
And
concrete and yeah,
yeah, I
so
can
much.
build my house and feed my family, and if they get sick, I can make medicine for them, and all
Yeah.
I need is this one plant.
Yeah, it's pretty
So it
amazing.
is amazing.
Yeah.
So I also think it's ironic that the most beneficial plant on earth has been completely prohibited and made illegal across the whole planet. Like it's literally the one plant that can save the planet, like hemp and what we were talking about, fuel and fiber and all of that. And it's like
Yeah.
the irony that they demonized it for all these years based on that it's, well, I mean, it was all racism and all that to begin with. It
Yeah,
wasn't,
there's a
it
lot of
wasn't anything real, but you
yeah,
know what I
political
mean? It's just,
propaganda. Yeah, but I think in the grand scheme of it, like people are gonna look back and they're just gonna look at us and be like, what were they doing during that time?
I
They're
think,
so crazy because this is really just like it's been like 100 years or something.
I
Like
agree with you. I think that people will look back on this time and this will be like a dark
yeah,
ages.
it's such a small period. It's really not that long. I mean, it's long enough. It's some people's lifetime, right?
Yeah.
But it's enough, and there's been enough damage done to where it's just like, come on, man, like. I don't understand. Greed seems to overrule a lot of, I don't know, rational thinking, it seems to be.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong about that. That's overrides a lot of rational
Yeah.
thinking. That's why I think cannabis prohibition happened. I Anslinger, the guy who kind of spearheaded the whole thing.
Yeah, Harry
Um,
Anslinger.
yeah, so he was an enforcer for alcohol prohibition. He lost his job, and I didn't know this until recently. But I was having a conversation with somebody, and they were saying that when all that was going on, that there were people who tried to stop him, people with money. Henry Ford, for
He
example.
built a car entirely out of hemp that ran on hemp and everything.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that even with now you think about what kind of power somebody with that name would have today, the auto industry and all that and Ford, but back then he couldn't even,
Yeah.
he couldn't stop it, and there were some pretty heavy hitters involved in all
Oh yeah,
that.
so there's Anslinger, and then just from like the private sector, you had William Randolph Hearst, and he had a large, interest in paper and
Yeah.
lumber and his he had a newspaper,
Mhm.
so he was easily able to, distribute all the propaganda. It was just a lot of nonsense going on during that time for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just the irony of the plant that they chose to target and the
Yeah.
necessity of it
They
to the
started calling it
planet.
marijuana, right?
Mhm.
Because, it was easily attached to, Hispanics, Mexicans, and black people.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to think about. What interests me is how they always try to paint it as something that makes people violent, but it has the complete opposite effect.
And you can't die from an overdose, but they paint it as this horrible thing that causes violence and that this is your brain on drugs and the whole
Yeah.
thing. And literally everything they told us about cannabis is the opposite.
Oh yeah, there was I think it was called the LaGuardia report, and I could be wrong on this. Am I right
I
about
think
that
you're right
report?
about that.
Yeah, and it was from like, I don't know, like the 30s or something, like a long time ago. And it was this huge, like 140-page report, just completely discrediting all of the nonsense that was
Yeah,
being.
LaGuardia was, I can't remember if he was a governor. I think he was a governor in New York. And they had stuff, I mean, TV was brand new, but I saw a clip of like a news thing, and maybe it was on a reel or something. They
Uh-huh.
used to do news on the movie reels, but
Hmm.
he had doctors that were saying, no, this is not true. This is medicine. It helps
Oh
kids with
yeah.
epilepsy and all this other stuff. And so, I mean, how heavy were the heavy hitters that they disregarded LaGuardia and Ford and other people that were also kind of heavy hitters. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So it just shows like that had to go up.
Yeah.
A lot of people had to either be convinced of the lie or buy into it to begin with.
Yeah. What really gets me is how people can have like just no knowledge of just like these big corporations like influencing policy and just like the flat out just like wrongs being done and how they can just believe everything that they're told at face value
Well,
sometimes.
I
You know
don't
what I
think that,
mean?
yeah, but I don't think people believe it. I think we negotiate lies with
Is
ourselves.
that what it is?
Yeah, I think so. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, and we were talking about married couples and how they
Okay.
negotiate lies so that they can move forward and not be mad at each other.
Yeah.
So I kind of think that we do that with politics too.
Yeah.
I mean, if I have a problem and I acknowledge it, then I have to do something about it. So I'm just going to pretend like I don't have a problem. And I think that we have done that very much so with our government and our politics. And we don't realize there's a problem because we stick our heads in the sand. I did. I mean, like before I started working in the cannabis arena, my idea of being an educated voter was I will watch the news during an election year.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people do.
And I know now that everything I see on the news is bullshit. So it's just, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, if you just kind of look at it and just kind of take a step back, I mean, all of those news channels are trying to get viewers, so they're going to put the most enticing information on
it's all
there. And
marketing.
it really
It's all
is. Yeah,
marketing.
PR and marketing. Oh man, a lot of smoke and mirrors,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? And
Absolutely.
that's what people will base their whole truth off of, which is scary.
Yeah, no, that's people believe what the government tells them. Like when I talk to people like my mom from her generation, she was born in 1952. And I mean, they grew up during, the Cuban Missile Crisis and JFK and all that. And the way that they viewed the government and the news and the media was this is a reputable source of information. And if you were a politician and you said something, well,
It's the truth.
certainly it's the truth,
Yeah,
you know?
but they're just people. That's the thing. It's just people doing all the work.
And making their choices. They
Yeah.
make their choices on if they want to, I mean, for lack of a better term, use their power for good or not good. I
Yeah.
mean, we decide what we do with our day every day. And
Yeah.
I guess like for me, it's hard to understand people who wake up every day and decide to do something that's really crappy for everybody else.
Yeah, I don't know if sometimes I don't know if you just get so much money off of a situation that you're just easily able to remove yourself from the actual like repercussions of it.
So that's where we tell ourselves a lie,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
That's where we tell ourselves
It's
a
like,
lie.
yeah, it's not that big of a deal,
Right.
or whatever you tell
Well, I
yourself.
mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's just something small and.
Yeah,
It's irrelevant, but all of our little irrelevant things, they add up to something pretty meaningful at the end of your lifetime.
it definitely all adds up. Especially, I mean, you have people who aren't able to get treatment and medication in a safe way, and then
Hmm.
you also have people who are just locked up for they've lost their complete freedom. And like when you start looking at the numbers, like that's one of those things where it's easy just to like put your head in the sand on where we have, I don't know, what, like 6% of the world's population or something. We have like 25% of the world's incarcerated. Like we have an ungodly amount of people in jail, and a lot of it for cannabis. And
So, yeah, so that is something that I really hope that we can do something about. I
yeah,
think that passing medical was the first step in that. And there are people doing good work on expungement now for people who get medical cards that they can, have their records expunged. But my opinion is that nobody should be in jail for a plant,
right.
period. End of story,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know.
we have this thing to where we want to tell people how they should handle their consciousness and that they can only do it in certain ways. I mean, that's why people drink, right? They want to relax. They want to, I mean, that's what they say, right? You're trying to ease stress. I mean, you're just trying to alter your consciousness in a little bit of a different way.
Yeah.
And that's poison.
Yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
is. But I can legally drink. I can legally take Percocet or Oxy or whatever I can get my doctor to give me.
Yeah.
But if I get pulled over with a joint, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. And those things are so hard on your liver, your kidneys, and Man, long-term repercussions, they end up having just like a negative effect on you.
Well, I mean, they started the war on drugs. It's well, I mean, the government tries to legislate morality all the time, and they don't do a very good job of it.
Right.
Um, you know, um, with and it's a civil rights issue. I think cannabis is a civil rights issue, just like gay marriage is a civil rights issue, or racial equality is a civil rights issue. It's like I have the right to medicate myself the way that is my choice,
Yeah.
and you can only do it this way or that way if it's cannabis because the government stuff, but I mean, um, ultimately, people shouldn't be in jail for a plant. So I'm hoping that now that we have medical, now we need to start working on that. I was reading an article today about a guy in Louisiana who's in prison. There was a petition on Facebook, and I don't know if it's legit or not, but it made me start thinking.
Yeah, well, that's good at least.
Yeah, so it was a petition to get this guy out of, he'd been in prison in Louisiana and had like $20 worth of marijuana or something. It was
Oh,
really,
wow.
yeah, and like
You never know.
he's serving hard labor and life without parole for $20 worth of cannabis. And so that made me start thinking, I'm like, okay, I need to think about this more. What can we do?
Yeah.
And I work with Greater St. Louis Norml, and we've worked on, right now we're doing some stuff for patients, but expungement is definitely in that realm of what Norml addresses. So I think
Yeah.
we're going to talk some about that in the coming months. And
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine adult use is going to be the next thing pursued, right?
I mean, I think we need to get our medical program established and all of that.
Yeah.
But,
Like 5-year plan, maybe.
well, I mean, reasonably speaking, it would be better just from a logical perspective. You want to address something like that in an election year when there's a presidential election.
Okay.
Voter turnout is really important in cannabis initiatives, and when there's a presidential election, there will be higher voter turnout. So that means, and we don't want to do it in 2020 because we're still, getting medical set up. So
Yeah.
I've heard that some people have it on their radar for 22 or for 24. But I think that what is really, really important is that I think that eventually we will pass some kind of adult use measure.
Yeah.
That when we do that, we do two things. We don't screw patients over because every state that
Right.
legalizes recreational after they legalize medical, patients are affected in not a good way.
Yeah.
And two, we have to get people out of jail. Those are the two things that we absolutely have to do with an adult use measure.
100%. That's what I was going to say. Like that, I would imagine that has to tie into that.
It absolutely has to. So, I mean, eventually, the dark ages. So back to the dark ages
Yeah.
thing. So like your body has this system to process endocannabinoid,
Yeah, we have the
cannabinoid system.
endocannabinoid system.
Right. And so I think that, in the coming years that people will start to, and when I say people, I mean like government people and all that, that this is not only just a plant that we have a right to, but we have a necessity for. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, we have to have oxygen, we have to have, water, but we have an endocannabinoid system. And when you have an undernourished endocannabinoid system, you end up with autoimmune disease and you end up with anxiety.
Yeah.
And so my prediction is that in the coming years, they will start to see that everybody needs cannabis in their diet, in their life. It was part of our food chain for millions of years, For millions of years, we ate animals that ate hemp, and we had it in our food chain, and we didn't have Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and prolific autoimmune disease. And
Yeah.
there are illnesses and conditions that exist today in numbers that it's ridiculous. I mean, if you look at the history of American health or whatever, and you look at this many people had this disease in this year, and now there's obviously something that has happened to change that. So
Yeah.
the two things are they removed cannabis from the food chain and they added food preservatives and additives to the food chain at the same time.
Yeah, people are eating not real food for sure. And then, yeah, I mean, if you just look at the plant, and its whole evolution throughout time, it's been with people like in step, you know what I mean? And so if you look at a plant, I mean, they have an agenda too. I mean, if you really think about it, like plants want to survive just as much as anything else do, and they want to spread. And like this plant grows everywhere and it grows easily, and it's like the compounds within the plant are a part of us as well. So I
Hmm.
mean, we've developed together. You know what I mean? And it's not going anywhere. And a lot of people are certainly like deficient of cannabinoids.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, they don't occur in the same. Cannabis is the only place where you can get cannabinoids in that quantity. I mean, our
Right.
bodies make very small amounts, and I mean, you can get CBD from hops, um, but it's not. I mean, they really did not do us any favors when they removed that from. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the one plant we really, really need. We could
Yeah.
probably do without a whole lot of other plants, but like that's the one that,
Yeah. Well, I
you
don't
know.
think it's possible to. I mean, like you said, it's definitely a failed effort, but it's definitely not. You can't keep it's obvious it failed. Like you can't keep it away from the people.
No, I mean, eventually, though, I mean, eventually people wake up to it. People
Yeah.
wake up and they go, wow, wait a minute, maybe it's not okay that the government's telling me aspartame is safe and that cannabis isn't. And
Right.
maybe they're not the authority that we trust them to be. Maybe they're actually the least qualified people on the planet to gauge the health and safety of our food and medicine.
Oh yeah, a lot of people will believe that just because something is like on the shelves that,
Hmm.
you know, like maybe there's somebody that's checking everything to see if it's safe for you, but that's not the case. Like nobody's doing that.
No, I mean, some of the medications that they allow on the market are ridiculously
Oh
dangerous.
my goodness.
And you know, the medicines that they're using for chronic pain and can kill you. My mom is on medication. She's an amputee and she has chronic pain and fibromyalgia. They gave her a prescription for Narcan.
Oh really?
And I mean, when she came home with that, that terrified me.
Now, how strong is that? It's like,
So no, Narcan is what they give you in case you OD.
oh,
Narcan is what they're giving opiate prescription users now because the risk of opioid overdose death is so high
oh,
that if you have a prescription for Vicodin or
they're
Oxy,
also giving you that.
yes,
Holy cow.
here we might kill you with this one, but here's one that can save
Yeah,
you.
like just in case something goes wrong, here you go.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, that freaked me out.
Yeah, that's some crazy
Yeah.
stuff.
I remember reading about them giving it to ambulance people, the ambulance drivers in the city, and I was like, that makes perfect sense. They gave it to my,
Yeah.
68-year-old mom, and I'm like, what the hell?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So, so you probably already said it, but I might have missed it. So, what exactly drove you to like joining the campaign trail?
Well, I was a stay-at-home mom for many, many years, and I did band boosters and helped with scouts, and
Yeah.
I didn't really stay home. I was really active and involved in their lives, and they grew up, and I was kind of sitting there, and I'm like, I need to find something that like a cause, like I
Yeah.
need to find a cause, and I'm sitting there smoking pot, going, I need to find a cause, and so I was on Facebook one day because I spent a great deal of time there at that point in my life, and
Shocker. Like a lot
yeah,
of us.
and I saw a thing about medical cannabis, and I had started reading. I had 20 acres out in the woods,
Hmm.
and I was like, oh well, if they're gonna start, I could grow some pot. I had amazing flower gardens and vegetables and all this,
You already had a
and
green thumb.
I had a totally green thumb, and I had actually had a place where I was going to build a greenhouse, and I was going to grow herbs and do perennials and do like a little nursery.
Hmm.
And so I started looking at cannabis, and I read an article in a magazine that said the cannabis industry was for women, that the cannabis industry was and it was easier to get a foothold in the cannabis industry than it was like in other industries, relatively speaking. And so that kind of intrigued me.
Is that because it's
um,
newer?
Newer, and I think that people who, I mean, this
Just
is
more
just my opinion. Yeah,
open-mindedness?
I think that people in cannabis are more open-minded and are less likely to. Now, there's a difference, though. There's a difference between cannabis people and then people who are involved in the cannabis industry.
Oh yeah.
Now, a lot of them are the same people, but there are also people who are involved in the industry who aren't in it for the plant. They're not in it, they really just want to make money. Not that there's,
Capitalist.
yeah, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that necessarily if you're not hurting anybody while you're doing it,
Oh yeah.
but that's where the problem for me comes in. So, um, but yeah, I mean,
It's definitely a part of it.
yeah, for sure. So I started working on the campaign, and I started working on it in 2016, and I I would get nervous and shy. I hated collecting signatures, but I would go do it because that's what we needed. And so I talked to the campaign manager and just said, how about if I just go pick up the signatures from the permanent signing locations? And so I started helping with that and got really involved, and then we didn't make the ballot. So we collected 100,000 signatures more than we needed, but we fell about 200 short in Congressional District 2, which is St. Louis County.
So you had enough signatures total, but you didn't have like you were 200 short in St. Louis.
Yeah, so you have to have a specific number of signatures from each congressional district, and you have to do that in 6 out of 8 congressional districts. So,
Oh wow.
so I worked on the litigation team, and we went to court and we tried to get back on the ballot, and we were not successful. But in the process of that, I had been at that point during the campaign, I had been in chronic pain for years, and I woke up the first day we went to go to the law office for litigation, pain free, no explanation,
Yeah.
just. And I always, that was kind of an indicator to me that I could maybe have more influence over my health and everything than I gave myself credit for.
Yeah.
Because I always believed that I rose to the occasion. That makes sense. Sorry, get
Absolutely.
all.
No, you're good. I had some tissue around
No,
here
it's
somewhere
okay.
if we need it.
But the other thing that happened was I started meeting patients like
Oh
Aiden
yeah.
Markham and the kids with epilepsy, and then I didn't even want to grow anymore. I just, you know,
Yeah, man. Yeah, I drove down there and sat with Ashley, and man, it's amazing like what like it's life changing for some of these
it
people.
absolutely is. And so I met Ashley and Aiden, and we're in court, and I'm looking at this kid, and I'm like, if other people saw this kid, there's no way that they would say, no, you can't give this kid the medicine that he needs. This is
Yeah.
a kid who's having 50 seizures a day to having no seizures a day, and you're going to say no? I
Yeah.
mean, and so that's when I started putting all the miles on my car. It was during the 16 campaign. And then I started taking photos of patients, and Aiden was my first one. So I did the Missouri Patient Project, and I took photos of patients, and I had a Facebook page, and we printed them and we took them to fundraisers, and I went places and talked about these people that I had met,
Yeah.
and people with MS and epilepsy and cancer and diseases I cannot even pronounce.
Yeah.
And they're finding relief from cannabis when nothing else is helping them. And then I started really just trying to find ways to help raise money for the campaign. One of the things that I learned in 2016 in litigation was that you can't get a lot done if you don't have money.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. You have to make
the capitalists
you have
are
to have
right
money
about
to,
that.
yeah, you have
So
to have money to make things happen. For sure.
exactly. So we started in 2017, and I started doing events because I did that when I was doing band boosters and fundraising for the school. It's
Yeah.
like that's what I did. I was
Yeah.
like,
Just same
and
skill.
right. And so I wanted to have a trade show, and I started working with the campaign and with MCIA and doing events that benefited the campaign. And then last September, we had an event in Kansas City, and I realized that and this is before legalization, and we're doing this, and I realized that after legalization, it was going to be bigger. It was going to be thousands of people, not hundreds of people.
Oh yeah.
So the other thing though that really affected me was that, the money thing, and that, when we do get ready to do adult use, I really want to be a part of that because it's really important that patients and activists are the people who really move that forward. I think that's my opinion. I don't want the capitalists to be in charge of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a tricky situation, right? Because there's definitely going to be this tipping point where all of the big corporations are going to try to get in on it
For
in some
sure.
regard.
For sure. And I think that we are doing a good job of trying to make sure that Missouri operators get first shot. Eventually, the market is going to be It's going to be different. I really think federal legalization will happen in the next couple of years, if
Yeah,
not sooner.
hopefully.
And that's going to change the entire landscape of it.
Oh, everything, everything. I was talking to my best friend way back in like 2013, telling him like, man, Starbucks is 100% going to position themselves and get into the cannabis space.
They'd be stupid not
Yeah,
to.
and from what I've heard recently, I think they've announced some plans already to do so, and it's like, well, they're already everywhere.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? They're already distributing drugs on every corner, like in America. So, it's just change one substance for the next.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they'll probably start with CBD infused. The
Y-
infused beverage market's huge anyway in
yes.
recreational states and all that. So I could,
Oh yeah.
yeah, that would make sense for Starbucks to and other companies too. I think that just even from a perspective completely separate from like how amazing the plant is and all that. I mean, this is a business opportunity. It's not very often that an entirely new industry is born, you
Yeah.
know. I
This
mean, the
is
dot-com boom and cannabis
yeah.
and
This can change a lot of people's lives.
absolutely. And you know, it's going to be interesting to see what it looks like after December. You
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff that I do a lot of work with MoCan Trade with the trade association,
Hmm.
and they've been a fantastic partner. I've told them that I've infiltrated their organization to make them do good things with their money.
Yeah.
And so I've been totally upfront with my desire to continue to be a whacktivist, as some of them would say.
That's
So
funny. What's that
I'm
group like?
they're, you know, I mean, I was ambivalent about them at first. You know, it's like, okay, I don't know about these guys, but you know, I have met a group of people who care very much about making sure we have a solid industry and we have, you know, a platform for being able to deal with the state on their rules and regulations, and they're helping me do some patient advocacy work, which is amazing.
Hmm.
And so it's been, I was pleasantly surprised. Some of the capitalists have hearts too, so
Yeah.
it's so that's been good. But we're working on some stuff coming up at the end of June. We're doing a fundraiser on the 24th in Kansas City that'll benefit Aidens Alliance, which is Ashley and Aiden and
Yeah.
their family. So they have the Aidens Alliance Foundation is helping patients who need help, low income or special needs families who need help with their doctor visits or their patient card fees and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they're helping me do that, and that's it's a pretty significant thing. Like, this is the first time we've been able to raise money for patients that it will directly benefit
And
patients.
you
It's
know where
all
the
been
money's going.
exactly, and
Yeah.
so we've raised all this money to pass the law and to all this other stuff, but we haven't gotten to raise money that benefits patients directly, and so I'm excited about that. They have, and there's a huge need for it. There are a lot of people who cannot afford $200 or $300 to go to the doctor to get a recommendation.
Yeah, so what is the cost exactly? I know it's I think $100 for a grower's card,
It's a hundred
but that's
dollars
all I
for a
know.
grower's card. It's $25 for the patient card, but you have to get a certification from a doctor. So the
What kind of
doctors,
certification do you have to get?
so they just have to certify that you have a qualifying condition.
Oh, okay.
So the qualifying conditions are really broad, and then there's a catch-all, so you can get a recommendation for anything the doctor thinks you can benefit from.
Right.
So this is a conversation that was on Facebook earlier today about a lady said she went to her doctor and lupus is not a qualifying condition.
Certainly should be.
Well, but it's the language is written so that
It
she
can
could
be.
get that autoimmune disease and chronic pain, and I mean,
Yeah.
so the trick is finding a doctor who's also open to cannabis. So they're the doc in a box things that are popping up everywhere, and they're going to charge patients $300 or $400 for a recommend for a
To be
quality.
seen.
Yeah,
Oh,
and you
that's
know,
robbery.
if you go to your regular doctor at SMS or Barnes or wherever, they're not going to write you a recommendation because they're beholden to a hospital and a healthcare system, and malpractice insurance goes up and all kinds of other stuff. So,
That's true.
yeah, so
Wow.
I mean, the unfortunate reality is that these places that pop up and say, "We'll give you a recommendation for $300," that's where people are going to go because
You just need a doctor friend.
yeah, because those doctors are going to be friendly to other doctors are going to look for reasons not to give you a card. you
Yeah,
know?
I don't. And why? I wonder. Like, what's their reasoning?
I honestly think it's mostly a lack of education about what cannabis is,
Yeah.
and then the fear of, you know, involved with malpractice insurance and the healthcare systems and all that. I mean, the healthcare system in this country is a corporate machine. That's
Oh
all it
man,
is.
it's really just sick care. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's not
It
really
is.
health care, and
No, it's not.
it's really management of symptoms. They don't really treat any root causes.
No, it's funny having conversations with doctors about the first do no harm thing. And I actually had a doctor stand there for like 20 minutes and try to explain to me how prescribing a pharmaceutical epilepsy medication is first do no harm over prescribing cannabis first. You know,
Yeah, I don't
and
know. Like those synthetic compounds are not the
I
same.
mean, he really believed what
They
he
do
was
believe it.
saying. And that was what scared me. I'm like,
Hmm.
you are educated. You are smart. You're obviously smart enough to be a doctor. Why are you not smart enough to look at this and go, wow, this medicine doesn't have side effects and it can't kill them, and this one can. Let's try this one first.
Yeah, I don't even like the term side effects. They're all just effects.
Well, that's
They're all
true.
just effects. Like some happen more frequently than others.
Unintended or not the one we're marketing for is actually what it is. This is
Yeah.
not the effect we are marketing for.
Right. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like all of these effects are possible. It's just
Hmm.
these are more likely than others.
Yeah, and even that is, I was reading some, and I can't even remember where it was. Somewhere it was an article about though how they do the studies and how they determine, you know, if this much happens, then it's a good effect or a bad effect, and they can have really bad effects happen, but disregard them. Like the way their protocols are written, it gives them the ability to
Some loopholes
disregard.
there.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, but we can't have cannabis because it can get you high.
Yeah, yeah, and there are some good things about modern medicine, certainly,
Oh,
but
absolutely, absolutely.
in general, just the way we handle certain things, like I'm a huge, like I'm just so much against like antidepressants,
Hmm.
not for the most part because well they're overprescribed and most
Absolutely.
people don't need them. They definitely help some people, I'm
Hmm.
sure, but not the amount of people at the rate that they're being, prescribed to people. It's crazy. It's ruining people's gut health and it's causing them to like not actually produce serotonin naturally. It's downregulating that ability. It's keeping them in a terrible spot.
I think so, and I also think as a person who has suffered with depression almost my entire life, so I don't say this from a point of view that's um, not knowledgeable about it. But I think that the idea that you can pop a pill and make everything okay negates some of our responsibility for our own mental health.
Yeah.
And it puts us in a mindset that, well, I don't really need to change the way I think about things. I just need to pop this pill and I'll feel better.
Yeah.
And it's just party to the lies we tell ourselves so that we can
Yeah.
get through the day, you
Why do we
know?
always have to be happy?
Um,
I mean,
I
do
don't think we should always be happy. I think that lessons come from pain.
yeah.
The happiness I think sometimes is a result of getting to the other side of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I'm happier than I've been in my entire life, and I'm off all the medication that they gave me for years, antidepressants and all that.
Yeah.
And but the biggest thing for me is just that I started changing the way I thought about things, and I
Mm.
started thinking about. Um, I used to be the way I thought about things was very negative. And I thought a lot about what I couldn't do and what was wrong, and not about, like, how can I fix this or what's the solution. And I remember just like, I was laying there one day and I'm like, the house is a mess and I'm fat and I'm, this. And it's like, I'm a miserable and I'm unhappy. And this voice in my head was like, then get up off your fat ass and do something about it. This is your life. Like, if you're not going to do something about it, who's going
Yeah,
to?
you got to own it.
Exactly. And so I just, I was just kind of, it was weird how little synchronicities started happening and little things. I would drive by the Lions Club, and Hillsboro has this sign out there, and I don't know who it is who puts the messages up there. But I drove by one day and it said, "Nobody will pedal the bike for you."
Oh yeah.
And then, it's like, okay, I see where you're going with this, And then a couple of weeks later, it was be the hero of your own story. And it was like, so it really just, none of that started occurring to me, though, till after I started using cannabis. I was I was like vegged on all the medications that they had me.
Yeah.
Like I really honestly believe that if I hadn't been on cannabis also, that my brain would have just stayed in that
Like in a
stagnant.
fog.
Yeah. Well, I in 2017 or at the end of 2016 when the campaign was done and I decided to do the photo project, I had a camera and I had been doing photography like as an amateur for years, but I went and took a class. I wanted to go take a class, and so I was like, I'll go back to school. But if I'm going to go back to school, I can't do it on all this medication. Like I recognized it. Sometimes it felt like there was a physical wall in my mind. Like
Oh.
I'm trying to put two thoughts together, and this should be a no-brainer, and it's work, and I'm not getting there. So I knew that to go back to school, I would have to get off the medication. And so that was when I really started exploring like using the oil and all that instead of just smoking.
Yeah.
So,
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, you can't. I couldn't imagine trying to go to school like living in a fog where like I mean, you're thinking just a little bit slower.
no, it was, I mean, and I stopped using, by December, I was off all the pharmaceuticals except for I was off all the antidepressants. That was the first thing that I got rid of. They had
Oh.
me on Cymbalta, which I took 4 of those a day. Lamictal, I took 2 of those a day. And then they had me, I can't remember the other one that I took twice a day also. That was just the antidepressants.
Did you like
That's
wean
not,
off of these or did you like
yeah, no, I went to my doctor and I said, I'm getting off this medication. You can, I mean, I was basically like, I need you to tell me how to do it. I'm going to figure it out one way or the other. But
yeah.
so she told me how I needed to back off of it and everything. And I did that. And,
Did you experience any withdrawal effects from those?
so, ironically, I had been being treated for severe vertigo. I was motion sick all the time. So, I couldn't go to the grocery store and walk down the aisle without getting nauseous. And I had been to the doctor, and they had told me that there was nothing they could do about it. And I did all these, anyway, it was like tests and months. So, I get off the Cymbalta, and I quit being motion sick all the time.
Huh.
So, the side effect of me getting off of the Cymbalta was I didn't have to take Dramamine every morning before I got out of bed. And,
Yeah.
so I started to find out that not only was my medication not really helping me get better, but it was actually making me sicker. So by the time I started school in January, I was off most of it. I was still on some of the anti-inflammatories and stuff like that. But, I didn't realize how much the medication kept me from being able to think for myself,
Oh yeah.
and so, and I was still not happy. I mean, I was on massive doses of antidepressants and I was still unhappy. And that was because I had work to do. I had
Yeah.
to do something to.
So do you find more fulfillment now that you're pursuing the things that you're pursuing and I mean Midwest Canna Expos and
Yep. So, yeah. So that's been amazing because I never would have pictured myself as a business owner
yeah.
and all of that. I've always been fantastic at being a sidekick. But this was just something that I was compelled to do in a way I don't even know how to describe. It wasn't even like I went, "Oh, okay, I'm going to do this." It was just like I was just doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping, my goal is that I can have a company that's successful and that we are creating educational opportunities for people. I feel like education is the key to like
100%.
all of this.
So many people just still aren't aware.
Right. And so I mean, obviously I want to make money. At some point I want to be able to not live with my mom and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
but my big thing really as far as the financial stuff is that I really want to start building and working towards getting prepared to be involved in a legalization measure in a few years. So that's really what's on my radar. I
Be involved in what way?
I would love to have the money to help finance it. That's my goal. I feel like the people who write the checks are the ones who get to
Yeah.
have influence over the process.
At the end of the day, you can actually, like, you can still do good if you don't have money, but if you have,
Oh,
if you have a
absolutely.
lot of money, you can almost do a whole lot more good though, just in a different way.
So with great power comes great responsibility, and
Yeah.
money is power.
It really is, man.
You know,
You can just do more things.
I really, I've never, I don't think I could motivate myself just to have money. Like, I can't go, oh, like I love shoes. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
work really hard
I
or
mean, money
whatever.
itself is nothing, but it's just like what it
It's a
affords.
tool.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
tool.
Like what
It's a
can you do
tool.
with it?
And so, I mean, I every single time I told Ashley Markham this, every single time I get a chance to do something for Aidens Alliance, I will. So our conference that we're doing on the 25th, 10% of the profit is going to go to Aidens Alliance, and then 10% is going to go back to New Approach Missouri to help pay off some of the campaign debt.
Oh,
So
nice.
they still have tens of thousands of dollars worth of campaign debt from the signature collection company that validated our signatures and stuff
Mm.
ahead of time. And
This is the one in Kansas City coming up.
yep, so it's going to be on the 25th. We're going to do the Aidens Alliance fundraiser the night before, and then the conference that day. And I love being able to do these events and then take part of that and give it, give
Yeah.
back and be able to help, with patients and then getting campaign debt paid off. That's a huge burden, and the board of directors for New Approach ends up being responsible for that, and they're just volunteers like me who've done
Yeah.
amazing work and not gotten paid for it. So you
Yeah, it's
know,
just all people just I mean, like somebody has to do the work and they have, they took the initiative to do it.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that's and we'll need field works if we try to do something in a few years. We have to
Yeah.
pay that debt off, so because they were amazing. So
Yeah, and it's something that everybody benefits from. I wonder if there's
absolutely.
a way to like for them to get, I don't know, something. There's going to be so much money generated.
I really believe that people who are involved in the industry and who are making money from cannabis have a responsibility to help further legalization in other places with that. I just feel like
Right, like these
it's a karma
organizations.
thing. It's
Yeah.
like if too much has been given, much is expected, I guess, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I know not everybody shares that, and that's okay, but I just always feel like, I mean, I'm a big believer in karma. You get out of it what you put into it, and I
Yeah.
think that's true on levels that humans don't even comprehend.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I'm all about that. The energy you put out is definitely what's returned. And if you have these organizations that, put in all the legwork and made it possible so you are able to actually get into an industry and like
hmm
make all this money, I mean, it definitely wouldn't hurt to give back to those.
I mean, it can't hurt you, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and if it can give you a little good karma, why not?
Yeah. So do you see yourself continuing to throw like these big events? I
Well,
mean, the expo is huge.
yeah. So
Like let's talk about that a little
we're gonna
bit.
do MoCan BizCon. It was amazing. Um, I started going to trade shows a couple years ago, cannabis trade shows, so that I could see what they were about, and I wanted to do it here. I thought it would be a good way to raise money for the campaign,
Yeah.
and so I had never been to a trade show before,
Yeah. You
and
had
I
a
was
huge
like,
floor.
yeah, I was thinking. I've never even been to a trade show, but I want to have trade shows. So I better, so I started going and we did a couple of small events and we're planning MoCan BizCon 2020 will be March 2nd and 3rd back at Union Station. I'm working on an industrial hemp event for August 29th and 30th, and that'll also be at Union Station. And I'm really excited about that because as amazing and wonderful as cannabis is as a medicine, like hemp is paper and fiber and fuel and plastic.
Oh
And I
yeah,
mean,
there's so many different uses.
so I'm really excited about that. And then we are so we've got the hemp and then MoCan BizCon, and then I'm also working on a couple of events that we're going to add in 2020. So this is very preliminary, but we're going to do a patient grow, caregiver kind of event during the week of 420
Yeah.
during 2020, and we're talking about what we would need to do a cannabis cup.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it, and we hopefully will be planning some other large-scale cannabis conferences in other markets.
Hmm.
Illinois just became recreational, and Michigan did, so there's definitely some possibility of expanding.
Right. Now, do you see? I noticed like a lot of the vendors that were at the last expo. A lot of it is like geared towards like supporting like the infrastructure of like the coming market,
hmm
and there's a lot of education. Like as the market becomes more established, do you see like those vendors maybe changing a little bit more as like more established
They
like
will
products and different things
They
or
will. It will change and it'll get bigger. Next year we'll have more vendors than we had this year. We
yeah.
put that all together in like 4 months.
Yeah, you guys
So
crushed it.
yeah, I mean, I have an amazing team though. That's like totally not me. I mean, they seriously. And it was ironic because I started, well, not ironic, it was actually totally expected. I started doing all this, and every single time I would get to a point where, okay, you can go no further without help. Like the universe would put this person right in front of me that was exactly
Yeah.
what I needed help with,
Mhm.
and every single time I would get to the point where I'm like, okay, I don't know what we're gonna do next. It's like, um, we're getting ready. I was actually working out of Union Station for almost a month before the event, and I'm working on all the production stuff. And my friend Chris shows up, and he's like, "Oh, this is my sister-in-law. She's been doing trade shows for 17 years." And I'm like, "Oh my God!" It was just
Yeah, perfect.
yeah.
Yeah.
So every single time I've gotten to a point, and I just have to continue to believe that, because I get scared about this stuff. This is
It's
like
scary
high
shit,
risk, and
man.
it's very, it's literally everything I have is going into it. And
All
so
in.
it's scary, but I just have to believe that if history's any indication, then I don't really have anything to worry about. Like every single time I come up against an obstacle, it
Yeah,
just,
just keep doing the
there's a
work.
solution that appears. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe if I just keep trying to give back, um, then I'll be able to, because that's really all I want to do.
Yeah, that's all you can do. I mean, again, I've already said it, but really, like the energy that you put out, if you live with intent and intention, right? I mean, things like you have to work through things, but they do also work out at the same time, right? I mean, they don't just work out without you doing something,
No, but
but
I think we put obstacles in our way mentally and don't
oh
realize it.
yeah.
It's the I was listening to a meditation thing on YouTube the other day, and she said it had a sentence, and it wasn't even about that, but she was talking about how we make rules for ourselves,
Yeah.
and we live by those rules. And some of those rules are good and healthy, but some of them are very limiting. Like,
Yes.
and this is a lie that and not necessarily a lie, and this is not something I'm going to change, but like for me, I don't really want money unless I can do something good with it. Like, I don't want money just for the sake of money.
Mhm.
So this rule that I have for myself is if you're going to have a lot of money, you have to do good stuff with it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, go be broke somewhere. You know what I mean? So, but I realized like I had rules like that were not healthy, that were not good. It's like, well, you can only be successful if you're, somebody else is in charge, or you can
Yeah.
only be successful if,
Whatever the
um,
lies we tell ourselves. Yeah,
exactly.
whatever.
And there are so many of them. It's, and
Oh
we don't
yeah.
realize it. So,
Yeah, people put themselves in boxes every day, and I've been guilty of this. It's like you want to be a certain way, but you've convinced yourself you're this other way, so you won't do the things that you want to do. You won't have that conversation, or you won't put yourself out there, whatever the case may be for the person. But it's just like you're holding yourself back. It's like you can literally wake up tomorrow or today and just be the person that you want to be.
you decide.
Yeah, and it's not like being fake or being unauthentic. It's like you're just really being who you want to be.
Instead of being the person that you believe other people expect you to be.
Right.
And sometimes that expectation's not even real. Like,
Right.
yeah, I project
You
this
made that up.
expectation exactly. Like they don't actually expect that from me, but
Yeah, I
so
relate that to people all the time, and with hats because people will say, "Well, I don't look good in this or that hat," or they'll ask you if they look good in it. I'm like, "Look, dude, everybody looks good in every hat." Because honestly, I'm like, "Oh, I couldn't pull off this hat," but anytime like a fedora or something, if I see anybody else in a fedora, I'm like, "Oh man, you look great." Like it doesn't matter who, like anybody else in the world, but for some reason, I'm the one person in the world that
it
I don't
doesn't look good in a
that does look.
fedora.
You know what
No,
I mean? So
yeah, no, I've done that
it's
too.
it's literally just your whatever you're thinking right in that moment.
Well, it's biased, and so one of the one of the most important things that I ever learned was that I had a lot to learn, and then I learned that it's not all about me.
Yeah.
And when I can step outside of myself and I can look at things from a non-emotional, non-judgmental, just observe,
Yeah.
not judge, not
That helps.
assess, and it does because like used to, I would call somebody and they don't call me back, and I'm like, oh my God, are they mad at me? And it's like,
Yeah.
no, they actually have a life outside of returning your phone
They got
call.
something going
You
on.
know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, but I remember just torturing myself over stuff like that,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
just like I could have been being so productive with my time, but
Hmm. Have you read the book The Four Agreements?
no, I haven't.
It's really short. It's a great book, but like one of the agreements is like, well, don't make assumptions, right? So like in that scenario, we go crazy because you start assuming all this stuff, right? And like also don't take anything personal, right? If they don't call you back, it has nothing to do with you,
Exactly.
right?
It's
So
not all
like,
about
yeah,
me.
right. So
Yeah.
that's two of the agreements, and it's just like you could s- you could save yourself so much suffering.
It is actually an incredibly freeing thing
Yeah,
to realize it's not all about me.
yeah,
Like I carried the weight of the world on my shoulders. Like I have all this responsibility. If I don't do this, it's not going to get done. And,
yeah.
it's like,
How'd you get there? Did you take like a huge edible one day and you're just like,
no, I don't know. It's been, enlightenment is not easy,
it's
and
a
it's not
process
for the
for sure.
faint-hearted, for sure.
Yeah.
Edibles don't hurt, though. I'll say that. I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with the mushrooms and stuff like that going
Yeah, with
on.
psilocybin being
Hmm.
decriminalized in, was
In
Denver
Denver,
and in Oakland.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's I really am hoping as all of this comes out that we're going to see um, kind of maybe a new movement in medicine. Um,
Hopefully.
if cannabis went mainstream, if cannabis were something that you went into your doctor at Barnes or wherever
Yeah.
and could talk to them about, and doctors were, I remember when I went to go talk to my rheumatologist about, I just asked her what she thought of cannabis, and I told her I was using it, and she said, "Are you worried about getting addicted?" And I was like, I mean, not any more than I'm worried about getting addicted to the tramadol that you wrote me a prescription for.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
and if I
I'd be
do get
more worried about
addicted,
tramadol.
well, exactly. I mean, but it was puzzling to me that she just,
Yeah, they really just don't know.
it's a lack of, it's a lack of education. Well, the endocannabinoid system's not taught in medical schools, but that's starting to change.
Yeah.
Schools are starting to
Well,
teach
neither is
it.
nutrition.
No, I mean, um, nutrition's not taught on any level in school. Like unless you go to a college and go, I want to learn about nutrition,
Yeah, well, even then, the things that they're teaching is just all old and outdated.
the food pyramid
Well, it
and
takes just a
whatever.
number of years, yeah, for the current science to actually get assimilated into, the curriculum.
Yeah, yeah, and but I hope I hope that the next leap forward in medicine is that they go back to plants and natural medicine and start to see. I used to think that holistic medicine and homeopathic remedies was all BS. I was like, oh, right, whatever.
Yeah,
But I mean, if I get sick, the first thing I do is go to the health food store now. The first thing I do is not go get an antibiotic.
yeah.
And right after MoCan BizCon in March, I got really, really sick. And the gut thing you were talking about, I've had 3 courses of antibiotics in the last 4 months.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, and I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I said, your gut generates your immune
Oh,
system.
yeah. You're
So
wiping out all that.
yeah, every single time I have to take those pills, it's
Yeah,
doing that. And I was like, I take probiotics and all that anyway, but I was
that
like, I'm gonna
helps.
have to do something else to like, otherwise I'm gonna be at risk for getting sick again because my gut
Yeah.
is,
Well, the good news, I mean, you can just start building it now. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Just lots of, vegetables and just all different types of produce and
yeah.
probiotics.
This is a recurring thing that keeps coming up in my life about how I need to
Yeah.
address my diet and go back to
I can
like
talk about it.
the,
I'm a health coach. I can talk about this for days.
yeah, I mean, I used to weigh almost 300 pounds.
Well, you look fantastic.
Thank you.
And
I've lost like 120 pounds, and so I've still got about 25 more to go to
yeah.
get where I want to be. But so I used to, when I was really fat, I'd be standing there eating cake, going, I mean, I could eat healthier, but it's not like I'd ever weigh 150 pounds or anything. So I'm at like 169 ish
Oh,
now.
yeah.
So I was like, I want to get down to 150, even if it's only for like 5 minutes. Like I only actually have to weigh that on the scale once to be
Yeah.
happy.
We could do that easy.
But it's just like, I have to dispel that lie in my head. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I did get to the point about 10 pounds ago where I was like, that you can't tell yourself that lie. At this point, if you don't weigh 150 pounds, it's just because you didn't work hard enough.
Yeah.
you
You can
know?
definitely get there. Yeah.
So, yeah, so I need to work on strength training. That's
That's the
my,
most important.
yeah,
Yeah.
so for somebody with arthritis, especially to have muscle to support your joints and stuff. But when I lost weight, I didn't do it the right way. And I lost a lot of the muscle mass that I still had. Um,
Oftentimes people do that because
mhm.
well, you get so asphyxiated on the number that like, oh, the number is going down, but it really like your composition really does matter. Like how much is muscle, how much is fat. Like once you do get to a certain point, the number really doesn't matter anymore because muscle does weigh more than fat.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's about getting that right
Well,
composition.
at this point, if I don't weigh 150 pounds ever, that's okay because I really like I was this. So I used to like lift weights and do all this other stuff like a long time ago before I was, housewife and all that. But I know what I need to do, and
Yeah.
so but no, the strength thing is really vital for me. So when I woke up in September of 2016 and didn't have any pain for the first time in my life,
Yeah.
I began this like mad scramble, and I wake up every morning not knowing if I'm going to be in pain or if I'm going to be in remission or whatever. So
Whoa. Yeah.
I work like I mean that's why I work all the time is because I don't know if I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to be
Like you won't be able to.
right. But I there like so the strength thing goes back to the stronger I am, then if my arthritis comes back, and it could, it potentially could. Um, I'm stronger to start with. When I started having a lot of trouble with pain, I had a lot more muscle in 3 years of not being able to do a whole lot and all
Yeah,
that.
that definitely helps just to put yourself in a good starting point, and then just I mean, just the healthier you are, I mean, the chances of it coming back are less likely.
So yeah, and I'm crazy the way I motivate myself because like I'll do this thing where I go, well, like alcohol. Alcohol is bad for you. So I'll go, well, I won't say no alcohol because I'm diabetic and it's bad for me. Like, but I have a conference call in the morning and I have to be sharp, so no alcohol.
Yeah,
So it's like, it's just stupid.
you just
Like,
gotta
it's,
find these reasons for that.
yeah, yeah,
That
it's,
works.
and it's
Yeah,
like, it's funny how I can motivate myself for something for the work that I'm trying to do and I can't do it for my own, but
yeah,
I've started to realize like my self-interest enables me to do that work, so I have to,
yeah.
um,
I mean, the better you are, the better your work is gonna be.
I try to give myself like 24 hours on the week, like on Saturdays usually I don't work. Um, but
That's rough, huh?
I started making myself take downtime just because it makes me better at when I'm doing the rest of my job. And I don't always get Saturdays off. I've got stuff I've got to do
Oh
this
yeah,
weekend,
yeah.
and we're 3 weeks out from an event, so I'm working pretty much all the
Work is
time.
nonstop, really. You know
No,
what I
and I
mean?
love my work, so it's
Yeah,
not even,
yeah,
I don't want to be doing anything else
yeah,
really. Like I have
yeah.
no personal life. I have no so but I love my work and I think that it is so important and I honestly outside of my kids, like cannabis is the most important thing I've ever done in my life, you know?
Well, you're doing amazing work.
Thank you.
Yeah, so definitely keep it up. Well, I'm gonna turn the floor over to you. Is there anything I know we talked about the most like the upcoming ones in
Mhm.
Kansas City. Is
Yeah.
there anything else like on the horizon coming up? Is there anywhere you want to anything else you want to plug? Places you want to send people?
Um Well, I mean, so places I want to plug. This is a good one. Living Green Resource Center in St. Louis.
Okay.
They just did an event where they were helping people with doctor certifications. They were working with intuitive cannabis. And we've had a lot of people on Facebook asking, like, where they can find doctors and where they can find information in the St. Louis area. So that's definitely a good place to go. And they're going to be coming to the conference in at the end of June and talking to caregivers about cannabis and about just all things caregivers. So I'm excited about the caregiver track because that's not being done anywhere.
Yeah.
And the caregivers are the people that ultimately are going to be the ones who suffer from lack of regulations and stuff. So if I'm an industry operator and I screw up, they might take my license. If I'm a caregiver and I screw up, I'm going to jail.
Yeah.
It's a totally different ball game. And so, so caregivers absolutely need to be educated on what the rules are,
100%.
what the regulations are, how to operate compliantly. It's important that we start this industry off in a way that, that's on a solid foundation. And so we will have the caregiver track, and so the ladies from Living Green are going to come and they'll talk some about the compliance and all that. But we're also going to have a session just on cannabis and the endocannabinoid system and how they work and that sort of thing. So I'm excited to be able to do that for caregivers.
Good stuff. Anything else?
That's about it.
All right. Hey, look, thank you so much again for taking the time.
Thank you for inviting me. It was
Yeah,
great.
absolutely. And then, yeah, we'll have to, what you said 2020, right? Is the next one?
March 2nd and 3rd of 2020, we'll be back at Union Station.
Yeah.
August 29th and 30th at Union Station of this year. So just like in a few months, we'll have the Industrial Hemp Conference.
Right on. All right, perfect. So a lot of good stuff coming up. All right, everybody, until next time.